Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America. Thank you for joining us on the program. The website, thisweekinamerica.us. Author John Brewer's passion for history unfolds in the pages of his historical fiction novels. Action, adventure, and romance abound in his stories. We're talking about the book Terpsichore on today's program. John studied at Johns Hopkins University, B.A. in biology in 1960, Ph.D. in biochemistry in 1963. Took his postdoctoral experience at the University of Illinois from 1963 to 1966. Married in 1965, has two children. His career started at the University of Georgia in 1966, from assistant to associate to full professor at the University of Georgia. He has over 100 professional scientific publications. He's been reading history books as a hobby for many years, and he's on a program, as I say, to talk about his new book, Terpsichore. John, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, and it's Johns Hopkins, Johns.
Yes, and I made it singular. It's Johns Hopkins University. Got that. Great to have you with us on the program. Let's talk, first of all, about the name of the book, Terpsichore. Where did you get that title?
It's the muse, the Greek muse for music and choral, dancing.
Yes.
And in the book, it's on several levels. This one of the characters is a guy who suffers from what we would call an inferiority complex, and his parents, his mother and stepfather, sent him to dancing lessons. And he learned how to dance very well. It's the only social skill he possesses. But it refers to maneuvering for social position as well. And it refers to a love of music and dance, and that's what he has. And he's trying to make his way through the world, but this is not really very much help. Inferiority complexes are really kind of reinforcing, and it takes the experiences of the First World War to shake him out of this really fully.
Yeah, the book is Terpsichore. It's available all across the country. Find it online at Amazon. John's website is HISTOROMANCE, historomance.com. And you'll get information on not only this book, but John's other books there as well. The main character you're talking about is Michael Renard, and he eventually becomes a math teacher. And here's a guy that's a hard worker, has a talent for writing. And he finally, after a while, like I said, socially stumbling around, finds the woman that he's about to marry.
Well, he is attracted to her because she's pretty and she's fairly bright, but she's also kind of desperate. She's living in this awful rooming house, and she's undergoing what is now termed sexual harassment because she doesn't earn very much. And she wants a way out. She wants a better life. She's maneuvering for a better position. She's in a social dance for a better partner. And so she's receptive to him, and they do get married. And he's very happy. But then the war breaks out, and eventually he has to join up because conscription is started. And after he leaves, this other character, smooth-talking Lothario type, moves in and seduces her. On another level, the book is about social isolation. The three principal characters grow up socially isolated. Two of them overcome this through their love for each other. The third does not and descends into madness and death.
Yeah, Alice is the woman that eventually becomes Michael's wife. Henry
Yes.
Middleton is the young man who's left at home, and it's interesting the transformation of your character, Michael Renard. Here's the one who was shy and attractive, humble, gets into the military with the British Army. This is, as you said, it was World War I, and he actually does fairly well. He's competent as a soldier, isn't he? In fact, he advances.
Yes. Yes. He finds he can command. He finds qualities in himself that he didn't know he had. As an artillery commander, he's rather aggressive, really. And he's also something of a pain in the rear end to his superiors, which is another matter. But uh, he's kind of a loose cannon, you might say. He's an artillery officer. But yeah, he finds his niche.
And back home, Henry Middleton, as you mentioned, is seducing the wife Alice. And when Michael finds out, he really works at salvaging the marriage, a plot against Middleton. That really is interesting how that unfolds. But it's something he really wants to fight for.
Yes, yes, he works out this scheme and puts it into effect, and it works. Uh, it was that or try and murder the guy, but he doesn't want to do that. He's now an officer. He wants to stay an officer, and uh, his scheme works. But this infuriates Middleton, and in the end, the two meet, and there's a final clash. Which leads to one man's death and the other man's near mortal wounding.
The book is called Terpsichore, and get the spelling. To look for that, you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and we'll have a link there and all the information. The author is our guest on the program, John Brewer. His website is Histo Romance, Histo Romance, ROMANCE.com. Information there on this and other books that John has written. And reading reviews of the book, they really are impressed, the reviewers, the readers, with the attention to detail at the time. How painstaking was it for you to go back and make sure that you were setting this in the proper atmosphere?
I try to do my homework. I've read memoirs of the time from a field artillery officer, for example, and also details about the guns that were used and how they were employed, loaded, aimed. All this was accurate. And for example, horses drew these weapons, but horses won't go through barbed wire. So you have to get rid of the barbed wire. That was one of the reasons for the barbed wire employment in that war. Not just to slow up infantry, it was to slow up cavalry.
Interesting.
But no, I like to think the details are fairly accurate as I can make them.
I mentioned in the beginning that you had been reading history books as a hobby for many years, and I'm sure you've seen those that probably short-circuited some of the research necessary. And I assume you have a great deal of respect for the authors that really paint a portrait that's very accurate.
Well, yeah. It's I tried to make it a good story well told.
Well, it is, and boy, as someone pointed out, the sign of a good story is when you care about the characters, and we mentioned them superficially, but there are multiple layers to the characters, the relationships they have not only among the three of them, but among everyone there. You've really drawn out these characters as well. As we're reading them, we can see them and we can understand them, or at least try to understand them.
Well, of the five first novels that I've written, four were in first person. That's Terpsichore is the only one in third person. And I had three characters, and I was trying to balance the narration between the three characters. that was the reason for that. And so that's in third person. That's a technical point. Otherwise, my stories tend to be coming-of-age stories, where a male character grows up, becomes an adult, and undergoes the stress of combat, of war. In that particular war, the stresses were enormous. What you really needed was a lot of luck to survive. But it helps to be clever, too.
Yes. Terpsichore is the name of the book. How long did it, let's use this as an example. How long did it take you to, from the time you got the initial idea, okay, this is what I would like to, this is the story I would like to tell in this book, to the point where you were finished with it, ready for press, and you were like, okay, I've made all the revisions. I feel comfortable where we are now.
I wrote that book in chapters and not sequential chapters. They were almost at random, but I knew where I wanted to go. I knew how I was going to get there. And I had a fairly good idea of where I was, I had a fairly good idea about everything, including dialogue. But as I mentioned, I think Tom Clancy made this comment once. He said that sometimes when you're writing a book, and this is mentioned in Terpsichore, the plot takes over.
Yes.
And
yes.
You wind up, the plot takes over its own relation. And I've noticed that to be the case. But I started out with the idea of some guy who had an inferiority complex, and his mother and stepfather sent him to dancing school, and he practiced, which was smart of him. My upbringing, I was a very shy child, and moving a lot. I was constantly being thrown back into myself. And years went by, and I finally figured out that, hey, if you're going to learn to dance, you got to have lessons and you got to practice. But by then I was married, so it didn't matter.
Well, it's a happy ending to the story, so that's good. It's interesting what you say there. Yes. As a reader, sometimes you're reading something, in the case here, and it's like, wow, I didn't see this coming. I didn't realize we're going to go take this little road and go off in this direction. And you're saying sometimes as an author, things happen, and it's not really where you plan on going either.
That's correct. Characters appear, and suddenly they become major characters. Events take over. But that's part. I guess that's part of the creative process. I like to think of it as creative, and
well, it's interesting.
But as far as answering your question, I don't know, maybe 6 months. It took me, because that's a fairly short book. It's only about a little over, say, 60,000 words. It's the shortest of my collection of 4 published ones and a 5th one that's getting ready to be published.
That's interesting, because when you start the process, well, yeah, let me ask you about an outline, because you hear some authors talk about, I've got an outline and I go in and everything is really rigid and formatted. And I get the impression from what you've just said during the course of the program, this is pretty much, you've got an idea in your mind and you just put it down on paper, on the computer, whatever, and it sort of takes off from there with your guidance.
It takes off from there with its own guidance. That's the thing.
So you're a passenger on this train.
Yes. But it's a great journey. It's a great journey sometimes.
Well, how difficult is it when you really get on a roll and it's like, okay, I have other things I have to do now. You know, we've got family obligations, it's the holiday or whatever. Is it difficult to turn it off, or Are these characters always in the back of your mind, no matter what you're doing?
They're always in the back of my mind, and I have a day job. Some people complain about writer's block. I frequently have that, but that doesn't bother me too much because I know sooner or later I'll sit down and start writing again. And family obligations have to be met, and I try to meet them. But yes, it is in the back of my mind, sometimes in the front of my mind.
Well, is that a key? Because and you've got, I'm sure, people that are listening that have thought about writing, they've got a story that they would like to tell, and they're afraid of the writer's block. Everybody experiences it. We all have in life to an extent, whether we're working on a paper for school, a paper for work, that type of thing. And basically, you're saying, if I understand, yeah, that's going to happen, just don't press, and it will take care of itself.
Everybody's different, but that's how I approach it. As I said, I have a day job, and that's a big help because professional writers, they're totally dependent on turning out the copy.
Yeah, and got their agent calling them, and the publisher calling the agent, and then the circle goes on.
Yeah. But in my case, I don't think the publisher is calling the agent. I don't have an agent, and publishers, well, I hire the publisher.
Works out better. You're on your own time frame, and you don't have to worry about somebody else's creative attitude license. You can go ahead and do that however you want to. We're unfortunately out of time. Now, we're going to have John back in the program to talk about another book called Good Man's Croft. In the meantime, you can get a copy of Terpsichore by going to his website, Historomance, HISTOROMANCE.com. It's available at Amazon, very easy to find. And if you can't remember any of that, you're driving around right now, just go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and you will find all the information there to get to John's website to get information on the book. John, a pleasure having you on the program to talk about Terpsichore. Looking forward to having you back on the show. Thank you for sharing all that great information with us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure being here, and we will meet again.
Definitely will. We'll be back to talk about the another new book that John has called Good Man's Croft, and the new one, Terpsichore, we were talking about on today's program. You're listening to This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us.